So, the morning after the night before, a lot of us are waking up today and remembering Anthony Joshua's performance last night. And I've got to say, Joshua's performance last night was punch perfect. He did everything right in there against Charles Martin. Charles Martin had no periods of effectiveness whatsoever. Joshua was a bit more cautious, a bit more methodical, which I think is a good thing. He was patient. He waited for the gaps to emerge. Didn't actually take too long for the gaps to emerge. And when the gaps did emerge, he counterpunched the counterpuncher, and he had the power to change the fight instantly. So I honestly think, based on the task that was put in front of him last night, it was a punch-perfect performance from Joshua. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. A lot of people will come out and discredit Charles Martin. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say Charles Martin had the strongest resume in the world, but at the same time, I'm not going to discredit Charles Martin. Charles Martin is a guy I've been covering on my channel for 2 years. Charles Martin's a guy I picked out as a good heavyweight prospect from an early stage in his career. Charles Martin may not have been the most athletic, but brought a serious boxing brain. And he brought various intangibles. He was a big guy. He was a southpaw. He could punch himself. So I give Joshua a lot of credit for the win, actually. A lot of credit. I need to clarify something about my initial post-fight video as well. And I think 95% of the people who commented on the post-fight video understood this. But there were the 5% of AJ believers who didn't quite get it. I recorded that post-fight video literally seconds after the referee waved the fight off. So, in that post-fight video, I referred to the fact in some quarters there may be some controversy because Charles Martin appeared 2 seconds after the stoppage when I started filming to be complaining about it. Now, just to clarify that, at no point was I trying to take anything away from Anthony Joshua. In my post-fight video, I clearly stated that this was a definite win for Joshua and that there shouldn't be any controversy. So I was looking to address any potential controversy head-on before it emerged. And I think that's clear in my post-fight video. I think the vast majority of people got it. I think 1 or 2 people are so hyped up on Anthony Joshua and so keen on him that they couldn't even see, there was any room for debate there. And to be fair, I don't think there is necessarily room for debate. I could just see that maybe Charles Martin was going to make a fuss, which he didn't, to be fair to him. So I was trying to deal with that head on. But anyway, here we are. Joshua, IBF heavyweight champion of the world in his 16th fight, and good luck to him. Now, in terms of how to rank him after this performance, when I did my heavyweight rankings at the start of the year, I think I had him either 21 or 22, something of that nature. I think this win propels Joshua well into the top 10. And by well into the top 10, I mean well into the top 10. I could see an argument to place Joshua as high as 5. I don't think, based on what he's done, you could necessarily throw him into the mix of the top 4, which for me is Fury, Klitschko, Wilder and Povetkin. Those guys are the top 4. But if we take those 4 aside, I can see an argument to have Joshua number 5. I think there's some argument that we should rank Ortiz higher than him. I think there's a possible suggestion that wins over Thompson and Jennings are more than White and Martin. There's also some argument to rank David Haye higher than him based on historic form, with David Haye having been a world champion previously and having beaten the likes of Valuev and Ruiz and Chisora. But, in all honesty, I don't think you're far wrong having Anthony Joshua as the number 5 heavyweight in the world based on achievement and based on what he's done. So credit to him for that. He's taken a massive step up in my list anyway. And he's not only taking a step up in terms of form, but as he's moving up in form, he's looking like a guy who could go higher. He's improving. And his performance last night was, in my opinion, the best performance of his career against the trickiest opponent of his career. So, I give credit to Joshua. A lot of his wins before, he's won in dominant fashion. But they haven't been perfect. You know, he's looked stiff, he's looked robotic, he's maybe had a defensive frailty, you know, that sort of thing. So last night, as I say, a punch perfect performance, and I'm really impressed, and I give him a hell of a lot of credit for that. I really do. You know, I picked him to win, but don't get me wrong, Charles Martin is a fighter, he's a good fighter, and Charles can come again as well. You know, it's a big heavyweight scene right now, and Charles is a young guy. He's only 29, I believe. He can still throw his hat back into the ring, and you know, only takes 1 or 2 big fights, and you're back in the mix. So fair play to Charles. And I saw his post-fight interview, and he took the defeat like a man. He gave credit where it was due. He said he lost to the best man on the night, and you know, fair play to Charles. I think he made a lot of money last night, some people are suggesting, so we have to see what his desires like to stay in the sport. But if he wants it, if he still wants it, if he's still got that hunger, you know, there's a route back for him in my mind. Now, as for Anthony Joshua, where does he go from here? You know, Joshua looks to be improving. He's comfortable on the big stage. He's clearly the darling of the casual fan. I think some people in the comment section of my previous video were getting a bit too hyped up about him. They were saying he beats everyone, he knocks out everyone, no heavyweight in the world will be able to live with his power. I mean, you know, sure, he's looking like a right force of nature at present, and he is hitting very, very hard. He clearly carries elite level power. Now, I think we can say that Joshua does have elite level power. But as for no heavyweight in the world can go the distance with him, I mean, let's be honest, Dillian Whyte went 7 rounds, and Dillian Whyte wasn't the most defensively aware in that fight. I would still back other heavyweights to go longer than Dillian Whyte. And we've seen this before with Deontay Wilder, haven't we? I mean, he was knocking out everyone in 4 rounds. He'd never been beyond 4 rounds, and then, you know, he fought Bermane Stiverne and had to go the distance. And, you know, that will happen to Joshua at some stage, I'm sure. Where we're at with him now is he is, in many ways, still what you'd consider a prospect. You know, 16 fights, etc. But he's holding a world title. And because he's got that world title so early on in his career, there's still certain intangibles about Joshua. There's certain questions. The big question has to be stamina, just based on the fact he's never been beyond 7 rounds. And on the occasion he did, there was some doubts over his stamina. How he reacts when getting hit, when the bullets are flying, is the other big question. Now, granted, he performed so dominantly against Charles Martin that neither of those were brought into question. And if he can continue to perform so, you know, so dominantly, he may never have his chin tested, and he may never have to go rounds. But if we look at the history of heavyweight boxing, you know, there's been some fierce punchers out there. You know, George Foreman, Ernie Savers, you know, Vladimir Klitschko, you know, there's been some monstrous punches out there. And at some stage, all of them meet a level of opponent who is either so tough or so stylistically challenging that you do have to end up going rounds. You do have to end up in a fight, you know. And for me, there are still a lot of tests out there for Anthony Joshua. And bearing in mind where he's at in his career, 16 fights only, bearing in mind that he hasn't been tested fully in areas such as stamina and punch resistance, I would still be looking to build him if I was managing him as a prospect / high level contender. So if I was managing him, I wouldn't go down the route of a David Haye fight or a Tyson Fury fight right now. I think those guys are very, very dangerous. I think with David Haye's explosiveness and power, and I think with Tyson Fury's movement and awkwardness and height, you know, Joshua might have some questions with someone who was bigger than him, who could take away his reins. I think those fights are there, but you know, Fury, Joshua, these are still young guys. They don't need to be made right now. And from Anthony Joshua's perspective, he's selling out arenas and flogging huge pay-per-view numbers without these fights. So it's not like he needs these fights to earn some money. You know, he's earning money fighting Dillian Whyte and Charles Martin. So where he's at is his career right now, bearing in mind the test he's faced, I would look to delay those fights probably till next summer. You know, I would look to have maybe 1 or 2 voluntaries this year. I'd probably look at having 2 voluntaries this year. And then I would look at Joseph Parker to Cam winner as a mandatory early 2017. And then I'd look to set up those mega fights, those career-defining fights against Fury, against Haye, summer of next year. That would be the way I'd look at it. In terms of his next moves for voluntaries, I think look no further than Derek Chisora, Pulev winner. I think that's a great fight for him to be in with. Both of those guys have styles that would prove good tests to him. Both of those guys, would be, well, the winner of that fight is going to be a highly rated contender, so it would be a credible name. Pulev's got his sort of elite level jab. Chisora's tough guy, tries to fight with the Joe Frazier style, get in the pocket. Both of those would be interesting matchups for Anthony Joshua at this stage. Maybe towards the end of the year you could look at another big domestic class, maybe a Huey Fury, maybe a David Price, somewhat of that nature. Or maybe you could bring someone over from America, a Bermain Stavern or a Bryant Jennings, someone of that nature. I think these would all be good tests. The Joseph Parker fight early next year, presuming Parker gets by to Cam, which is a big presumption. That's a tough fight for Joseph Parker. I've and ahhed over that fight. I've changed my mind several times. And Parker is a real threat. He's got world-class attributes. But what I would say is he's a smaller man than Joshua. Joshua does fight at range well. And Parker's too defensively inept at this point. I don't think it's good enough to say Parker's got a good chin, Parker's got an iron jaw. I don't think Parker's going to be able to take punishment like that. I think Parker's got a lot of work to do in terms of his defence before he steps in the ring with Anthony Joshua. And if the two fought today, I'd pick Joshua based on that, I've got to say. So that's the route I'd look to take. I'd think maybe July, August, step in with the Pulev Chisora winner. October, November, maybe look at a David Price or a Bryant Jennings. And next year, you maybe take your Joseph Parker or Carlos Takam mandatory. And then possibly in the summer, if you remain victorious, you take on Fury, you take on David Haye in a fight that's going to be a mega Wembley Stadium fight. And will be one of the biggest fights in British boxing history, for my money. Credit to Anthony Joshua. It's really good for British boxing that he won. The guy's improved. The guy is progressing very, very nicely. It's a punch-perfect performance from him last night, I must say. He's not God. He's not there yet. He's not completely inflappable. He's still got big tests out there for him. But he's a force to be reckoned with. And, it's going to take someone good to beat him. Let me know your thoughts. How do you see this fight last night? What route would you take if you were managing Anthony Joshua? If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe. Would appreciate that. Many thanks for watching.